Oh, at your service, Mirjam.
Mm. I'm at your service, John, and we will just look what comes out of this silence. So, hello, dear John. Yeah, it's a great privilege to talk with you. We were thinking, as you were suggesting, that we talk about the aging process, growing older, and that we also talk about passing over. So, dear John, what would you like to share about passing over, death, dying? That is, because you suggested this theme.
How to start? First of all, perhaps it is an obvious fact. It's happening, and like it or not. And of course, I look back, and of course, most of life I've forgotten. Some things I remembered. I remember once hearing that forgetfulness is a mercy of God. I think it is really, because life's often a struggle, isn't it? And then surprisingly, a few years later, you can't remember what it was all about. So much pain just gets washed down the river of life and gets forgotten. What happens to it, God knows. And I think of all the different efforts I've made. People often come to me now and say, what should I do about this and that, spiritually speaking? And I've rather lost faith now in human answers. I don't really believe in them very much. I know the world's full of teachers of all sorts, including spiritual teachers, but I've never liked being called a teacher myself. It never felt quite real. I never saw myself in that way, and even less now. Yes, I love that Bible saying, put not your trust in princes, neither in any child of man. And I certainly don't have much time for human teachers at the moment, because the great lesson, I think, of getting old is that things happen anyway. whatever we may think we've done about it, we just die. We die out. And it's really this dying out that solves all our problems. We just die out of them. Like we grow up out of the problems of childhood, the agonies of the agonies or the joys of our first love experiences, growing pains in many forms. We just grow out of them, don't we? Well, finally we grow out of humanity itself. We grow out of mortality. The Bible clearly explains that the wages of sin is death. And I've always found it very helpful to consider life. What is there about life that does not die? Well, if you want to know what sin is, consider what does not die. Is there anything in our human experience that does not die? Well, if everything that dies is sin, then what are we making? Then the best thing that can possibly happen to it is that it dies. We die out. And I think, and probably the greatest mercy of most merciful God is that he brings this human performance to a merciful end. The greatest blessing that life can possibly give us is death, which is rather the opposite way round to how most people think of it for most of their lives. But, and so all this teaching, for heaven's sake, teaching about everything, from how to stand on your head to learn your ABC. They're trying to teach us what God is, as if anybody knows. It all seems so important at the time, doesn't it? And then it just dies away. And we face this wonderful experience of being relieved of all the weight, of all the problem of existence. What should I do? What's my duty? What should I do about this, that, and the other? We just die out of it all. We were just taken out of it, just like a carrot is pulled out of the ground. It's just like that, isn't it? We're just pulled out of this life, willy-nilly, whatever we think about it. And I find this a marvelous process. And I suppose if I have made any preparation, I suppose I've spent many years meditating, so I'm fairly accustomed to the nameless and the formless in life, what some people would call the spirit. But then I've always loved outdoors, and what better demonstration of that is just being outdoors, just looking up at the sky. I always thought the best teacher, there's no better teacher than just looking at the sky. If you want to look from the finite to the infinite, from the problems of me to freedom, just look at the sky. You don't need a guru to tell you about that, do you?
Yeah. Also, do I understand you right, John? This, what you call this dying out, is making space for the eternal, for the nameless and the formless in us.
Yes, one can see that as a useful preparation. If you are accustomed through life to frequent the quiet, nameless and formless spaces, then you'll be prepared.
Yeah, I think this preparation for this is something worth mentioning. I know in the Buddhist tradition, they speak a lot about that you should daily think of your own death and meditate about it. And I'm not sure if it is in the Christian tradition also like this, but I think this is an incredibly useful practice. And it has become my habit to think of my own leaving this form. I don't even want to call it death, because I must say I'm actually looking forward, when I have completed this life, to leave this form, which is temporary, and go home. This is how I perceive it.
Well, I listened with a smile, Mirjam. We live such artificial lives these days, so divorced from the straightforwardness of nature. So simple things get dressed up as sort of spiritual teaching, when actually it's just the most sort of. I remember my granddad, when I was a little boy, would say to me, of course I wanted to be a farmer then, and he encouraged me. He said, "Work as if you'll live forever, live as if you'll die tomorrow." I think sort of, and there was one of the lovely old hymns that I learned as a child. Redeem thy misspent time that's past, and live each day as if thy last. I think these were very common in sort of everyday culture, and went into everybody's mind, the fact of of death. Yes, I've also been fortunate. I've witnessed a few human deaths, but before all that happened, I've seen countless deaths as a farmer on my farm. It was a great fact that imprinted itself on my mind from the beginning, the fact that farming is all about birth and death. In the seasons, they come and go. The whole of nature is a demonstration of death, of life and death, isn't it? So I rather I laugh a bit at modern complications. And, life itself is a preparation for death if we're not too sheltered from it, not too but we're so dressed up in artificiality and unnatural ways of life that these things aren't before our noses like they are in a more natural lifestyle. Yes, I suppose for people that aren't lucky enough to have nature before their eyes every day, then of course you turn to books and so-called teachers. I'm afraid that often comes along with mental complications, doesn't it? And, oh dear, Mirjam, I think it's time I moved on from this world. I don't feel I belong in it. I've long since felt I don't really belong in this life.
Are you longing for leaving this body and going into the other world?
I take great comfort in going back to Mother Earth. I'm not too sure about the rest of it, but I look up at the stars and I always felt more at home among the stars than in this world. My little brother's up there in heaven. That's good enough for me. And but where does it end, dear? Where does it end? I've always loved the word beyond.
Yeah.
But I don't care much for spiritual language, really. Mother Earth below, feet on the ground, and every night look up at the stars. Two great teachers.
I deeply understand, John.
Yes, I do emphasize this. Nature, you can't go wrong with nature. I don't trust people. I never have done, really. Well, when I have to be with them, I tend to take them with a pinch of salt, Always come back to nature, grass, the flight of a bird, spring and autumn, Mother Earth and Father God. I feel safe there. I don't feel safe in the world of books and videos and people dressed up in special clothes, talking about this and that. Stick to nature. Natural. Our problems are that we're unnatural.
Yeah, I think we have become very removed from the connection to nature as we have become removed from death and dying.
Well, those who are watching, if you want a good demonstration of what death is, just look at this form on the screen in front of you, which quite soon, and only too obviously, will be in a grave, won't it? Food for worms. Isn't it? Eaten by worms. That's what's going to happen to this. And this creature called John Butler will be just a name on the gravestone, if I have a stone, and that'll get worn away in time and forgotten, won't it? And you see, the great question is, what's left?
What is left, John? What do you think is left?
Well, it's not much good by thinking about it, because thinking is part of this unreliable thing called the mind. So I won't answer. I don't usually answer questions, Mirjam, that start, what do you think? Because I don't trust my thoughts or anybody else's. The last thing to trust are our unreliable thoughts. We think one day today and something else tomorrow, don't we? But so let's move on from thoughts and realize you can just see this silly old man sitting in a space, aren't I? This room is full of space, isn't it? Of invisible space. I'm like a fish is away in this ocean of space. Well, the room can fall down, but this space would just expand, wouldn't it? It just expands. Where is the end of it? It contains the whole world, doesn't it? And all millions of people, the same space, one space. Look, this is mortality, boxed in this little prison called John Butler. That's freedom, dear. This dies, look, and that's left.
Absolutely, yeah.
And anybody who's watched death, you see this happen. This goes,
yeah.
That's what's left, my dear. And what's meditation? Meditation is simply this, moving from this to that. It's perfect preparation for death.
Absolutely.
Beautiful. There we are. You don't have to call it anything because you can't. You can't describe it. Like you can't describe freedom, you can't describe spirit or perfect love. Least of all, God. But it's obvious, isn't it? Any fool can see that what's left is this. How else could I have such a broad smile on my face? Talk about all this, going to feed the worms. and this is released from this prison.
Yes. Yes.
Within this prison, with this in the prison, of course, there's not much light, so we're all blind. In this world, the blind lead the blind, don't we? and it's just there waiting for us. It's with us all the time, but so often we look down, not up, so we miss the point. But if you're in the habit of looking at the stars at least once a night, or at least up at the sky, or if you can't do that, just look out of the window, which is one of the best forms of meditation I know. Just look out of the window, my dears. It immediately brings you out into this world, doesn't it? Look up at the sky if you're lucky enough to see a bit of sky out of your window. And there you are. Reach for the stars, my dears. Then you'll be ready to die. I'm lucky enough to live in a very attractive small town in England, and we've got a lovely river flowing just a few yards down the road from where I live. And a lot of tourists come here on sunny days, sit by the river, come out from the big towns roundabout, to spend an hour or two sitting by the river, feeding the ducks, looking at the hillside opposite. Perfect natural meditation, isn't it? To sit by flowing waters. You feel that stillness, that sort of presence of the river. The continuity of time flowing past, and you're there sitting on the bank as the observer. You don't need spiritual exercises to do it. It's just common sense, isn't it? People just do it naturally. And they go, they've had a lovely day. They feel better for it, don't they? Can't say why. Yes, for those of us who can meditate and who've learned some of these practices, learn what it is to go to the heart. But of course, a lot of people haven't or don't. So for them, well, the book of nature is probably all they need. I'm thinking now at the end of my life, my favorite phrase to anyone that comes to see me is, this is what my granddad would say to me: keep your feet on the ground, my boy. See what's in front of your nose. which of course most people don't. If you look at people in the street, almost nobody is actually present. We're absent from the presence of God. That's the human problem. We're simply not here. We don't notice our feet on the ground. I wonder how many people watching this video have even thought about their feet on the ground in recent days or weeks or months even. When did you last actually feel your feet on the ground? And people go around looking for stillness, for heaven's sake. What's more still than the ground beneath your feet? What are you doing messing about, trying to find it in books and with gurus? What's wrong with the ground beneath your feet if you want to be still?
I like that. So true. So true.
I love to not know, Mirjam. I don't trust knowing. I think the less you know in this life, the better.
So
whenever anybody says, I know, I immediately know that they don't know.
Yeah.
I know what to do with the world. I know how to become self-realized or enlightened. I switch off from that sort of talk.
I agree.
I don't know, dear. What do we know? What do we know?
Everything we think we know, we have sooner or later anyway to give away and open up to the great unknown.
You see, words, if I call something a horse, it isn't a cow, is it? So words are divisive. What do I mean by divisive? Well, if I come back to my demonstration of this, you see, the presence, the spiritual presence. One of the few things we can say about it is that it isn't divisive, is it? It's one. It's universal. It's all-embracing. Contains the whole world. It is in itself. It is undivided. And if you think about things like the real qualities of life, spirit, presence, freedom, peace, even love in the greatest sense, this beauty is undivided, isn't it? Where does it end? Does it have a beginning and an end? Or is it a continuum to which we may or may not have windows of realization, but it itself is without beginning, without ending? Whereas the moment you bring things down into words, you enter into the words of what's called duality, which is divisiveness, this and that, right or wrong, good and bad, death and life, beginning and end. You see? So you are, in a way, advertising your absence from the presence of God by words. Are you not?
Perfectly put. Thank you.
So there's no need to fear going beyond words, because actually words are a low level of expression. And you see, the real things of life are, it's not that they're without words, but they have a higher language. And the higher language is what we call silence. Well, silence isn't empty. It's ultimate fullness, really, once you get the hang of it. It's actually, because it's all embracing, isn't it?
Oh, so beautifully said.
Don't fear. Don't fear if you don't know what to say. If you don't know what to say, thank God, and keep silent. and you probably find that what flows from your body language, if you're really at peace, is far infinitely more comforting to whoever's with you than this torrent of mostly silly words.
Yep. Do you remember, John, one time when I think we rang each other on Facebook, or what was that? You can ring on Facebook Messenger. And we just said nothing. We looked at each other for 10 or 20 minutes, said nothing. And then he said, this was the most perfect conversation. And I felt it too.
Well, it is, isn't it?
This was so beautiful because it was just this, our souls were communicating from the heart with each other.
Exactly. Well, just think of your dog, for heaven's sake. Who's your best friend? The old saying is, the dog's your best friend. But he doesn't speak, does he? Or the trees. And yet, well, of course, there's a sort of subtle language, but of nature, but it's not this sort of fragmented, divisive human language, well, verbal language. But the trees speak, the trees communicate. Look, the horizon communicates to you, doesn't it?
Mm.
Up your eyes to the hills from whence cometh our help.
Mm.
The waters communicate. Don't you look how almost everybody takes comfort looking out at the sea. No need for words.
Mm.
Sky. It's your garden. The comfort of silent language is actually more deeply communicative than switching on the radio, isn't it? I think it's a long process of growing in the confidence of this. It's not something you can just, do by clicking a switch. Because if your voice is artificially quiet, but all this language is all this is going on in your head, it'll be conveyed, one way or another. And to be at peace takes probably many, many years. We're born into a restless world and restless, unnatural world. So accepting the situation, perhaps we do have to accept some unnatural ways of trying to find nature again.
Mm.
There was an old example given, if you've got a thorn in your foot, you probably need another thorn to dig it out, and then you throw them both away. There's something in that, isn't there?
Mm.
It's good to just get fed up with words. These are all good indications that you're aware of something better.
Definitely. I was so many years living in silence that I didn't want to come out of it. I only wanted to stay there. And when the book came out, I needed to speak sometimes and be more with people. But I found it really hard because I learned to listen so deeply to the silence, and this silence began to teach me and speak to me, reveal to me things I don't find words for. And I still live from this silence. We can speak endlessly is this invitation into the heart of silence and remain there. Everything we all humans are looking for is to find in the stillness of our hearts. Everything.
May I make a few expansions? May I offer a few expansions to that word silence?
Yes, please.
For those people for whom silence may be a slightly sort of have some sort of limiting connotations. This stillness is also total reliability, isn't it? It's unchanging. So you can trust it. It's unshakable. It's unshakable. So in this world of unreliability, where everything is changing, change, it's something. It is reliable, trustworthy. We're told to trust God, aren't we? Not man, because man is wobbly, to say the least. And we all long, don't we, for the true love, the unchanging love that never says no. We're here today and gone tomorrow. And what is that if not this? And in terms of knowledge, there's this sort of knowledge, the knowledge of duality, which the world calls knowledge, knowing this and that. But see, higher knowledge is what we call faith. It needs no words. And we are saved, we're told, not by knowledge. We're saved by faith. In faith, you don't have to explain, really. You can just watch the river flowing down under the bridge. Just watch it. And it fills you with that sense of faith, doesn't it? You don't have to know what the river's called or where it's going or where it's come from. Just watch it. And it conveys its message of faith. That all is well, that all's in. This is another thing. You see, you get the sense of what's all in God's hands. The changeable world is held in the unchanging world. All the noise, the hubbub, the babble of voices is held in the silence. Is held in the quietness, which perhaps sounds a more friendly word than silence. The quietness held in peace, all the bombs, all the wars, all the arguments is held in peace, in perfect peace. It can never not be at peace. There's nothing in the world that's not at peace in the real world. We just need to open our horizons a bit. We get too small, that's our trouble. We live in prison. We literally live in prison in here, talking to other prisoners. And you can look out of the window. Even better to go outside. To begin with, we look out of the window. We get a glimpse of this first with these physical eyes, but of course, with the physical eyes, it's a bit more difficult. We have to do with mountains and things in this world. But this is, this world, the eyes of death see death. The eyes of mortality see mortality. There's also the eyes of the heart to see, which see a subtler world. There are levels of seeing, obviously. Paul puts it, we see through a glass darkly to begin with, but then face to face. Yes, I'm very fortunate. I was brought up with the good book and learnt it at school. Yes, I've been familiar with it all my life. Nothing better. That's why I always loved it, because it had so many references to nature, about animals and sky and things I love too.
I love you dearly, dear John, and thank you so much. And who knows, maybe we make one day another conversation if we both feel like it.
Anytime, dear Mirjam.